I'll give you a little short history just for back up here. And can you hear me here? I can hear myself really well. But, okay, this is broadcasting out or something.
It's very loud.
What? What?
Yeah.
Speak louder, or is it this way?
Oh, move this around somehow.
Yeah, you're good. No, it's not gonna come onto this room. It'll be, that's going on to Zoom. So
Oh,
these folks, you can't get over the.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the Zoom is getting it, but
Yeah, the Zoom is getting it.
yeah. So the rest of you sit closer, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be a little hard to see, I think. In some.
We're gonna fix this problem locally here. So that's all right. We're getting there.
Okay, well, just as a little background then, in 1964, I began a study on diving behavior of a marine animal. It was the first study of any marine animal.
There you go. Now you got two things, Jerry, right there. You got a microphone for you.
Oh, this,
Yeah, it's gonna go all over the dock.
okay.
Yeah.
All over the dock, it's not going out. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, this sounds pretty good, yeah. Well, anyway, I emphasize the marine animal because nobody had put anything on or done any studies of marine animals in the water. And yeah, there you go, thanks. And it was the Weddell seal, and the title of my thesis was Behavior and Physiology of the Weddell seal. Diving physiology is what I should have said there. And that culminated in after a few years of doing the thesis, in a book that was published called Weddell Seal Consummate Diver. And what was so exciting about doing that is that, as I emphasized earlier, no one had done a diving study before. I essentially had to invent my time depth recorder and then put it together. And I had the first ones were built by, I gave them the diagrams, and it was by a watch repairman in Tucson, Arizona. And they worked. They were kind of clumsy, but I could afford to be clumsy then with it being the first in the field. It really caused a lot of excitement because we, as scientists tend to be, they're kind of conservative, and they were not expecting what I started to tell them. In fact, I had a couple of people tell me they didn't believe me, and I didn't appreciate that. But in any case, the maximum depth that I recorded from the Weddell seal was 600 meters. And but at that time, I think people were thinking generally, oh, maybe whales and seals dive to 100 meters or so. And so that was the beginning of this. And that I went on for about 20 years. And that's when the book came out on that. And then I made a move. And I made a move to emperor penguins, and I worked for the last 20 years on emperor penguins in the again in the Antarctic, but not at McMurdo Station. I did some work there, which is ideal for doing controlled studies. But what I wanted to find out more of is what the actual biology of the animals were in the wild and out of the colonies, and so and my first problem was to find a colony that would be suitable to work with, and that will be one of the words to remember as far as takeaway on this is access. Emperor penguin colonies are very difficult to get to, and I was just talking earlier about that. And if you want to get a sense of how difficult it is to get to an emperor penguin colony, just call up your local travel agent and have them run a cost estimate by. And also have if you have any kind of cardiac problems, have your nitroglycerin pills handy. Anyway, how can you see this screen?
So the people online are seeing that online. They're not going to be able to see where you point to, unfortunately. So you kind of have to describe it, but that the Zoomers are seeing.
Okay. Well, then just to give a short speed on that, I spent 20 years doing that, and then the end of that effort, the book, we put a book together on that, and you'll hear more about that as I go along. So this is not a book review or anything. What I'm attempting to do here is just give you an overview of what I think is probably just about the most magnificent animal. And I'm not biased about it. So, but it's the emperor penguin. And if you look at this first graph, there are in the Ross Sea, and I titled it Emperor Penguins of the Ross Sea to give it a little more breadth, and also to emphasize how unusual the Ross Sea is, especially for emperor penguins. There are 7 colonies in the Ross Sea, and they're relatively close together in a way, but they're about, the spacing of emperor penguin colonies around the continent are about 70 to, well, I'd say 50 to 100 kilometers between each one. And so there's around the continent, there are an estimate of, it keeps changing every year as the satellite folks find another one, but there's about 50 of them. And the when we started, we knew of the 7 colonies in the Ross Sea. Some of them had not been discovered until 1964. And so that gives you how recent the history is on emperor penguins. And they are all difficult to get to, even Cape Crozier, which is nearest to the, it's at the very southern part of the Ross Sea, and it's within driving distance of a snowmobile or certainly a helicopter. And so but it had special conditions. It was quite a small colony. Usually it was around 400 or 500 pairs. And at the present time, it's up to 2,000 pairs. And why it's grown up so well is a mystery in itself. In any case, I wanted to study emperor penguins, wanted to study them in their colony, and I had to figure out where to go to do that. And I thought about going to the French base, where there's one right next door to the station. But with that, with the Russian station and so on, they didn't appeal to me because they were so far away from where I would be coming from. And their access was poor, and they didn't have airstrips. And so it was a big commitment. You'd have to overwinter. And I didn't have time for that. I wanted to work, I could only work in the summer months. I had other programs and other things at that time. And so if you walk up this figure on the right, and you look at Cape Crozier, that is the second most southerly colony in the world, and it's about 77 degrees south. And then there's Beaufort Island, which has been in a decline for the last years, and I expect it to go extinct one of these years. And there's about maybe 400, but it keeps changing each year. About 400 pairs there. Franklin Island is possible to reach, and it's only been reached when a few birds were still there.
And just hold your mic up a little bit. A couple of people are saying they're having trouble hearing you. So there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go.
And Franklin Island is exceptional in the sense that there's no place to land a plane, even a twin otter, but the helicopters can't get to it because of water between the base and the main base of McMurdo and Franklin Island. So the only time it has reached on the ground, or first time anyway, was 1993. And I'm pausing for a moment there because Karsten, was it 1993 we went there when we came back? So yeah, we got there by an icebreaker was bringing us back from Cape Washington, and they made a stop there. They had Coast Guard helicopters, which can stay on can fly over water. So then we had three northern colonies, which are larger for some reason. That was Cape Washington, Kooyman Island, and Cape Roger. And Cape Washington and Kooyman Island are two of the largest known emperor colonies anywhere. And so I, looking at that and then looking at the figure on the left, it shows that you see no open water. And this is taken, I think, in early September, satellite image. And the whole sea is filled with pack ice. And then there's fast ice around each of the colonies, usually. And so just to add a little braggadocio to this, I've been to all 7 colonies. I think I'm the only person that has been to all 7 colonies. And I say that, you say, what do you mean I only see 6? Well, Cape Quebec is on the other side of the Ross Sea, and we count that as part of that whole unit. And in 1 year, this wasn't an attempt to do this, but in 1 year, I went to all 7 colonies in 1 year, which I'm certain is a record that's not going to be unlikely to be surpassed by any. And that was a pretty exciting year. Now, how do I move this forward? Let me see. Okay,
Just the arrow?
first hiccup is I'm not moving. I've got to say I've got it here. It's saying it's being recorded.
Yeah, you got it?
Okay, yeah, I
Just
think so.
Tried the right arrow. All right, we'll get you here. Okay, and then let me get this out of the way. All right.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, just a little background as far as the animals are concerned. There are 18 species of penguins, and there are about 55 extinct species that have been discovered, and that number gets larger every year as paleontologists find a few more. And so this illustration just shows the nature of the variability in the birds, emperor and the Galapagos penguin on the far right. And you can see that some of them are much bigger than emperor. Some of these birds were really large. Been pretty exciting to see one alive. Anyway, the heyday for penguins was probably about 30 million years ago, so we sort of missed the boat on that. But emperor penguins have been around for about 2.5 million years, we reckon. So just that little bit of an overview, and we'll move along here. I can see now I got to get going here, or we'll be here all night. Okay, how'd I do that? I'm gonna look for one more
Little arrow.
Let's see here. I want to try something else if I can.
Wants to be hard to play with.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can make it work with a mouse. Oh, I think I see it. Okay.
Okay, wait, here, that's me.
Yeah, this is not working. Okay, you put the arrow on where you want me to.
Yeah, just that little thing on the corner.
See right there.
What do I do with it? Do I
You just, when you're ready to go, you just click on it. Click on it with shift.
shift? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you don't want that one? You want to go there here?
No, I want to go down.
You want to go back?
Yeah.
Here, we'll go back over here. That one? That one.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And
Okay,
then-
move on from penguins here.
Okay, go here. There you go.
Yeah, here's where we are. I wanted to show you what the last glacial period looked like about 12,000, 15,000 years ago. And this shows the Antarctic was completely an ice cap. And so that all of the emperor penguin colonies that exist today did not exist 12,000 years ago. They were somewhere else. And the Ross Sea, if you look at that, that's that sort of pie-shaped gouge in the lower left of the continent is shows it is completely filled by an ice cap. And so the age of the colonies in the Ross Sea can't be any older than about, I say, 7,000 or 8,000 years, something like that, because of the recession of the ice during that time. And then there's an ice shelf, or not an ice shelf, but ice all around the Antarctic continent. So everything is very different then. So there's been during the warming period of the steady rise. Now what is happening now is we've overshot the next cycle of the ice age that we should be moving into by having a continued warming period, and that's having some remarkable effects in the Antarctic as well as everywhere else. And the Antarctic is exceptionally isolated by the Southern Ocean, which is that yellow line that surrounds the Antarctic continent. And it's called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current as well. And there's more water moving along in that current that circles in a clockwise manner the entire Antarctic than all moving water and rivers and so on, the rest of the planet. And so it's a vast ocean, very isolated, and that isolation has some special consequences as far as the birds concerned in the Antarctic. There we go. Well, in 1973, we started getting satellite images from the Antarctic, and this is a beautiful illustration where it shows the minimum ice around the Antarctic continent in January, and the maximum ice surrounding the continent in, I think it's in July. And so you can see from January that the Ross Sea is pretty much an open area at that time, whereas it's filled in with sea ice, fast ice in the middle of winter. And that's just to give you an idea how what a changing climate it is. And the penguins are dealing, especially emperor penguins, which are relying on the Antarctic continent for the colony positioning year round, or almost year round anyway. And this gives you an idea of what's happened recently. This image was taken on the 21st of February, and what it shows is in the faint orange line is where the satellite image I showed you earlier is in the summertime. That's the extent of the ice around the continent. And so you can see it extends over towards the Ross Sea and then around West Antarctica. And then in this 2023, it was the lowest year of ice ever recorded. And if you look, the ice is just patchy around in the West Antarctic area, especially. And that creates a hardship because the emperors are still reliant on the minimum ice here for the molting, and I'll cover that a little later. But that gives you an idea of what how low an ice year last year was in the Antarctic. Holy, keep forgetting. Okay, I want to show you, coming back to access again, I want to show you a couple of the colonies just to give you a feel for them. So these are
Again, George, just talk into the mic. We're still getting, just, yeah.
yeah.
Not by your mouth, not by your chin.
Oh, yeah.
You vocalize through your mouth.
Oh, okay.
There you
That's,
go.
oh, I got it. I got it. Okay. Anyway, this is an aerial photo in 1990 of Cape Kosher, most southern colony, and it's the arrow points to where the colony is. It's in a rift. This is the Ross Ice Shelf that is moving past the Ross Island, and it's essentially ripping the ice apart here, and it creates these rifts. And in one of these rifts or canyons is where they established their colony. So it's very close to the ice edge, but well protected in most cases. by the configuration of the ice canyons that are going past it. That's one example. No two colonies in this mix of the Ross Sea are the same. And that's sort of one of the ideas I want to get across. And I keep hitting the wrong button there. And this is Beaufort Island, just north of Cape Crozier, and you can reach it in ice years where the ice extends all the way out to the island, because the helicopters can fly over that ice. They can't fly over any ice that's just pack ice where there's water. And so this gives you another, and it shows you that this is a very narrow ice, fast ice plate that is on the east side of the island, and the shady patch in the center of it is is where the birds are, and that's also what the satellite folks depend on for finding other colonies, is that dark area. That's a stain from the birds. It's a guano patch, essentially. And so if you have a situation where the place gets a lot of snow, it may not show very well. And there are a couple examples of that in the Ross Sea, and I'm not going to show them. I'm just mentioning that that's one of the problems of relying on satellite imagery. It's a great tool, and it's really told us how many colonies are there, but it does have its problems as well. And this, moving up the coast, we come to Cape Washington, and this is of course the one I have the most emphasis on, where I spent most of the time. And this is one I selected that we would go to try to use as our working base. And remember, no one had ever been to Cape Washington on the ice before, or any of the others except for Crozier and I think Cape Crozier. So I was really relying on the aerial photographs that the geology folks had taken of the islands to select this. And so it's kind of, well, we can see that now. There's a catch-22 about going to these any of these places, and that's that we rely on air support. Cape Washington is 200 miles north of the main base of the World Station, and I thought I might be able to toboggan up there. And NSF said, no, that won't work. There's too many water breaks in between there. And so the way we were going to get there was that we studied these geology photographs, or aerial photographs, closely. And there was a place we could land on a glacier. It's called Priestley Glacier. And it's one of the windiest spots in the world, but it's also a place where they could put a plane down. And what they were going to use is C-130s. And I won't go into it any more than that. Other than that, we had that did get us to it got us we missed the colony by 40 miles, and we had to traverse to get there. And that's detailed in the book now. But I was really determined to go to a colony, and it had to be Cape Washington. And I can't believe how lucky I was in terms of how remarkable Cape Washington was in many ways that we never dreamed of when we were doing the selection. This is Cape Washington, one small part of it at a time when there was, I think, about 18,000 chicks in the colony. And so with aerial photos, you can distinguish the chicks. With satellite photos, you cannot. So that is one of the other drawbacks of the satellite imagery. And this is all the brown stain which the satellite relies on. I wonder if that show probably did show, did it? But again, gives you the concentration of the birds. And it's a marvelous place to spend a few weeks. And so then we got around this transport problem by NSF acquired, and they chartered, essentially, they chartered two Twin Otters. I think it's the greatest flying machine that's ever been built. You can go anywhere and land anywhere and use any kind of fuel. So we were lucky enough to get them, and this is one landing at Cape Washington, and then in the lower right is one of our larger camps that we had there, and you can tell how many people are at the camp by the count on the tents, because we use one-man mountaineering tents, and there's 5 or 6 of them there, so that's how many were in the field in this particular year. And when we flew all the gear in, we could put it right almost where we wanted to set up the campsite. So that reduced our logistics considerably as far as access to the colony. It's annual sea ice, so we have to pay attention to the conditions and how they proceed. The ice will break up in January sometimes, so we figured we could stay until late December or possibly even early January before we're picked up. And if we stayed till January, we had to be picked up by icebreaker. Even the Twin Otters could take the risk of landing on the ice, which was getting in pretty bad shape. And this, I want to give you the idea that this access is that the ice animals are really isolated. And this gives you an idea of what that does for us. And what you can see is that we've set up camp and the birds move in, and their tameness and access to them is the best in the world. And so we were surprised about that, but it's still a wonderful way to study the animals, where you're essentially living right in with it, and they'd come and visit you and see how you were doing, and all that sort of thing. And so then we were close enough to the ice edge that we could learn a lot from what was going on at the ice edge, as well as what was going on with the biologgers that we were putting onto the birds. And so the illustration on the left is birds. And this was a daily activity. Would march out to the ice edge and to take their foraging trips. That's where the journey of emperors comes in. This is what I say we call it the #1 journey. This is the commuter journey to catch fish to bring back to the chicks that they were raising. And keep in mind, these chicks, when they hatch, weigh about 300 grams. By the time they fledge 5 months later, they weigh 12 kilos. That kind of an increase in size is just amazing. And at that point, they have to be independent of the adult. And this on the right is a departure. There's thin ice just before the ice foot of the main fast ice of the colony. And they move across that very quickly, and they create a hole, and one gets created by their using it. And the departures are very hasty. This is an example of departure, and it's a real rush. The idea is you don't hang around near the ice edge, because that's where the leprosy is, that are the main predator for the emperor penguins. By the way, an emperor had never been seen to be taken by leprosy until we saw it on a routine basis at Cape Washington. And this is the return of birds, and when they come back, it's just birds flipping around all over the place. And did you notice those streams and bubbles behind it? And I feel that plays an important role in 2 ways. One, there's hydrodynamicists that did a study on it, suggests that it reduces the drag on the birds so they can accelerate faster and to higher speed. But also, there's some often double uses or more. And the other use is that they create a cloud, and so the visibility of the birds and where they are is obscured by all of these bubbles streaming around. So that works in favor of the birds if they show up as a gang. And that's an arrival of the birds at the colony coming to the edge. And I was just fooling around here. It's great to see them arrive, but I had a panoramic camera, so I decided I wanted to see how many birds I could catch in the air at the same time. And my record here, there were 11 birds airborne at this one shot. But they do come in as a stream. Sometimes it's a much narrower area that they're arriving on. Well, here's the main factor that we're after. We were putting these TDRs on the birds, and I'll call them TDRs or biologgers. I'll be back and forth on that. And this case, I didn't always have, in fact, most of the recorders I had did not have tracking capabilities on them. That came later, and it showed where they were going. And this one track, the one that's furthest away, it says 12B, is about 200 kilometers from the base. And then we have several tracks that are sort of in focus. And that focus, we learned later, another type of recorder that we had better resolution on that. But this gives you an idea of the track itself. This is 2 different birds on 1.5 to 2 week journeys to sea. And what you can see is there's a lot of deep diving. The ordinate on this is that the limit is 500 meters. And then I compressed the record so I could get it all on one view. And so you can see this concentration of deep dives. So this really verified that they were deep diving species, at least around the Cape Washington area. And I forgot what I was going to say on that. Anyway, that was the kind of an impressive area about it. What they were after, we were getting an idea by collecting the otoliths out of the scats. And it told us that the Antarctic silverfish was just about over 90% of their take of what they were feeding on at this time was that particular species of fish. Well, then the pièce de résistance that came up when we came up with a transmitter that could transmit to a satellite and give us the data that we wanted. And it was actually, this one was just a test because I was planning on using it with another site. And Paul Paganis, who I've worked with for years on emperors and all sorts of things, and a great asset because he was a professional anesthesiologist here in town as well. So we had our doctor on board with us all of the time when we were in the field. And fortunately, no one got injured enough that they needed a doctor. But in any case, it was reassuring to have him around. And this record, I asked a friend of mine who was doing a lot of analytical work. She's just a whiz with computers that just spend hours on it. And to in this test, just to check it out sometime. And it was at least 2 years after we put it on. Because what I was trying to prove when I put it on in the first place is that it would work and get a record. And I did a quick check of it and I said, oh, this is going to work great. And so that's what we got with it. And she broke it down. We had the entire record showing where they were diving and how deep they were diving. And this record shows the bird going, leaving the cave and going out about 200 kilometers all the way down near Franklin Island. And the concentration, which we then looked at some of our other records, was over a place called Prairie Bank. And the depths that they were diving to were clearly taking them to near around the bottom. You could see how some of the dive groups were just flat. And so this mesopelagic and demersal animal. And it gives a new appreciation for what emperors are capable of, because at the other places where they've been studied, they didn't have the ice shelf, or not the ice shelf, the bottom shelf that we have in the Ross Sea. And so the Ross Sea is unusual in having, I think, the largest shelf ice, or shelf, benthic shelf of any place in the Antarctic. And that's another reason why it seems that there's a concentration of emperors in the Ross Sea. Why I want to focus and give you sort of an overview of that. So I got pretty excited about that. So we got a number of records now. Okay, well, so we're putting together what the commuter dives were all about. That was what the adults were doing to raise the chick. And then we started asking, we were staying long enough with the colony that we were staying till the chicks left. And we were asking ourselves the question, well, where are these chicks going? You know, they go to sea, they're pretty clumsy when they go, and nobody sees them. And you talk to people who go on cruises down in the Ross Sea, and they always come late, and they don't see any chicks either. And so we said, well, we got to look into this. And that by that time, there were satellite transmitters coming out that would just give position, but they were small enough that we felt we could put them onto the chicks, which were then weighed 12 kilos. And so the bird on the left is a chick about to go to sea, and it's the transmitter on its back. And we mounted them in a way that the glue would decay after time, and the transmitter would fall off, because we weren't going to, this trip was forever. These birds are going somewhere, we don't know where, and they're not coming back. The chicks, the youngest birds you see showing up in the colony from time to time are at least 2 or 3 years old, and they don't start breeding until they're 4 or 5 years old. And all this is done without any parental help. And so the other thing is how determined they are about leaving, like most youngsters are, I guess. And so this shows birds going off of a bit of a snow ledge and dropping into the water below. And so that's this is the true march of the penguin, you might say, because it's so determined. And this is an example of one where it was by accident we did this. This is in 1993 when Karsten and I were by ourselves out there. We were breaking down the camp, and we were out at the ice edge. And what we saw was a phenomenon that I'm not sure it ever happened before. I didn't expect it to ever happen again, because it was a fluke. The iceberg was grounded in there, but the storms had been such that they built a ramp up onto the colony. And so the birds, when they get to the edge, they just start walking along it looking for a suitable place to leave. And in that course, they just acted sort of like a trap for them. And so they walked up onto the colony and onto the iceberg, and then they started not diving, but you get the idea of what they did in the next scene, I think. But they just sort of fall and tumble, nothing especially graceful about it. And so if you watch your evening news about what, a month or 2 months ago or something, National Geographic put a little piece on, and the guy who was the photographer was really excited about it. You can't blame him. And it was going off of cliffs just like this. And he said, unprecedented, never been seen before, and never recorded. I said, wait a minute, we did this 20 years ago. We just didn't put it on the news. Anyway, it was kind of funny. But here's let's see if you got to see. these are chicks that are leaving, and they're really determined. That walking off of that iceberg is an example of it. And so this is, now remember, these birds have never seen water before. So they're walking out there, and what they're looking at is just a flat surface, and, and they just sort of step off and think they're going to keep walking. And obviously, it doesn't work out that way. But they're, so it's a great scene to see, but it's also very informative. It wasn't known at that time. The emperors, when they leave, or in such haste for the chicks to get out, that they're still in about 60% down, as you can see there. It's the only penguin species I know of that the birds go to seed while they're still in down. And I think it's this compressed breeding period that they have to get it all done before winter sets in. And we solved the problem of where all the birds go, or why they don't see them. And it's because these birds, now this is the first time they've been to sea, so they're only a month or two old when this was recorded, and they leave the Antarctic. These tracks are all from Cape Washington, but they go up to a point where they get closer to New Zealand than they get to the Antarctic. The most northerly we got was bird that reached, I think it was about 56 degrees. And, you know, it was a small sample. We did it over 3 years, putting it on a couple of birds here and there. And then so it was about 12 birds. So my feeling is just the way they behave about everything else. Yeah, that this is something that is really built in. And then about 10 to 15 years later, people at other stations started to put transmitters on chicks to see where they went. And they were further, at colonies further north, but still the same idea. And it was very reassuring that, you know, about birds, you see the behavior once, you're going to see it more than once. And all of the birds that have been tagged this way go north out of the Antarctic and actually out of the Southern Ocean for a short period before they turn and come back. So it's been more studied extensively, but the basic question we were asking had been answered. But chicks are not seen in the Antarctic or in the Ross Sea because they're not there. So then we move on to another journey that was striking because it had the same question that once these adults leave the colony, when the ice is breaking up, the chicks have left, or actually they usually leave before the chicks, is that you don't see them around. We don't see any birds molting anywhere. We know there's about 70,000 adults that are going to sea along the coast of the Ross Sea, and there's very few, you feel a few, but not many molting sites of a small number of birds. And so we put transmitters on them again and track those over a couple of years or so. And this is probably the most dangerous time in the for emperor penguins. They've just fledged their chicks. They're down to kind of a major playing weight. They weigh about 25 kilos. But when they molt, they need to be up about 35 to 40 kilos to get through the molt. The molt itself lasts 35 days, and there's a tremendous weight loss when that is going on. They can't feed, they can't go back in the water until the molt is complete, as the integrity of the feathers are shot. And so this graph shows the bird leaving at 25 kilograms from Cape Washington, and then the direct route where it turned up needs to be at about 40 kilos. When it arrives at this side, you can see these two tracks that have been plotted in here, and that as the school of flies is directory of 1,200 kilometers, so you know they're going further than that. And that's remarkable. They're traveling so far. It's so important to them to find ice that's stable for at least 35 days while they get through the mold. And the reason it answers that question, where do all adults go? Well, they leave the Western Antarctic and go to the Eastern Antarctic, where there was reliable ice for them to molt on. And so in any case, I got an opportunity to go out to that area during that time of year. And we did that on the bomber in 2000. And we went to the Eastern Ross Sea and we found molting birds. And I was asked by one of the census takers, they were doing this for a seal study actually. And I said, he asked me, he said, "We're going to see many penguins out there." And I said, "You're going to see thousands of them." And we did. It's probably the only time of year, only place perhaps, where you can see more emperors upon the ice than any other Antarctic bird or mammal. And so it was another story that was told and resolved with these transmitters. And then we put transmitters on some of the birds that were finished with their molt and see what kind of a track they would come back. And on that track back, we managed out of it. We only put about 8 transmitters on, and we got 2 that came back to the Western Ross Sea and showed the track, and it showed up at Cape Roger, this particular bird. And so we wanted to trace more of them that way. And I was, it wasn't possible to do it. I couldn't get, kind of a minor piece of equipment. I needed an icebreaker.
Yeah.
But I had great funding, but it wasn't quite up to it. So we finally got an icebreaker, and we got to the Eastern Ross Sea, where we were going to look for birds. And I just show this because it's in that satellite image, and it just pleases me, because if you look closely at the top where it says ship channel, there's a little ding in the edge of the ice, and that's where the ship cut into the ice. And then they had taken this photo a few days after we had left the area, but I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. But anyway, that's the significance of that. But we did, when we were there, this is unusual to have so much ice there, and we took advantage of it because there were a lot of birds there. So we tagged birds that were there with the idea that with luck, we would get some more tracks of them coming back to the Western Ross Sea. And we were so lucky in this time. We couldn't have planned it better. We wanted to find out what happens to the younger birds that are not breeding, or the non-breeders. They do not go back to the colonies, and essentially they went north, and they worked their way north with the setting sun, so that they have a fair number of a few hours of light before sunset at the various places that they went. And so it told us a lot about the non-breeding birds as far as their needs are concerned. Well, let me finish this with a few takeaways. There are 7 Ross Sea colonies, none of which have been studied because all had major obstacles to access. And I can't believe how lucky we were about Cape Washington. And as I said earlier, the chicks hatch at about 350 grams. They have to be up to about 12 kilos before they're fit enough to survive on their own. And then we solved the mystery of the disparate juveniles, mystery of the disparate adults. One mystery we don't know needs an electronic genius. So, all these transmitters, these up we mounted with them, with the idea that they would stay on. And we would track them through the entire year until they shut them the next year. And most of them were lost. And some of them were lost only after a couple of months. And it raises the question, why are those transmitters, why did they stop transmitting? And you can think of all kinds of reasons for it, but it's a question that needs to be answered. And I think I'm going to summarize what I have talked about here. The world is the greatest peril for the adults. That should be appreciated. And it's a matter of body mass when they get to the whole site. The ice has to be stable where they're going to mold. And there needs to be an abundance of food. This is the time when on that month-long trek to the eastern ice fields, they need to gain about 15 kilos while they're traveling. So that tells us something about it. As far as summer dispersal of juveniles is concerned, they need safe seats. And I think that a lot of times they don't get safe seats. And they need an abundance of krill and fish to succeed. And that's it. And so I'll close with, I had something here, but I can't read. Anyway, COVID came along and it took us 3 years to put the book together. And so that was a very convenient time for that. And I should say, what dawned on me on this is that dawned on me after COVID that I would be going back to the Antarctic. So that's it.
As always, we encourage people to put some questions in the chat. So if you have questions, go ahead and I'll share them with Dr. Kooyman, and I'll start off while you guys are typing. So first off, if you don't,
Yeah, wait a minute. I forgot to acknowledge you.
oh, let me go back. I'll put that back on.
You need to go with that.
There it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I just wanted to comment and acknowledge a few important people here. Most important was my wife, Mel. She endured the many trips I was away. And then I really got nasty because I started taking the boy. So she was really left alone. And Karsten and Tori, we couldn't ask for better people to work with in the field. But I knew before we went out there, that was one of the reasons I took them.
Yeah.
When you're working in close quarters like that, it's really important that you have good campaigns because most trips lasted 2.5 to 3 months in very harsh conditions. And Paul again, I just can't say enough about Paul. He was a great partner in work field and on reports. He was on almost every expedition I went on, both in Antarctica and places. And then they brought the logistics man in itself, and he was really cooperative. I mean, I was asking for things that I have a better appreciation of it now than I did then, about that he managed to make it happen. And Wally Penhill was an oversight on the whole thing and just was very supportive at NSF. And then the field, there's so many people involved in the field, I just happened to do that. And I have to mention Jim Master, the co-author with that of the book, and his way with words really made this happen. So those are the people I want to acknowledge. Now you can finish what you were saying.
Okay. We'll get wait a minute here. We'll get some questions, I think, coming in maybe on the chat room, but I have a couple. But first off, a blind plug for the book. I've read the book. It's full of all kinds of really interesting science, But I encourage people to buy it, both for that, but it is one amazing adventure story. And it's a very dangerous place to work, and you don't really appreciate it. And I don't know how poor Mel, his wife, edited this book and thought, oh my God, I'm so glad to have my husband and my son's back. But if you like an adventure story, you gotta get this book. It's really, really cool. It's awesome. So anyway, put your questions in the chat room and I will, or we can ask folks here on board. But coming back, when they're coming back, all the birds are returning. There's safety in numbers, obviously. How do they coordinate that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, as far as, when you say coming back, the adults coming back to the colony.
Yeah.
Or just on their commuter trips.
Yeah.
Either way, I think they're safety in numbers for a couple of reasons. I'll give you the reason, one reason I think it's helpful that you ask the other might do is for defensive predators and so on. And that these birds diving so deep, 4 or 5 meters, that even in the summertime, and they've got ice, and even in the summertime, it must be dark down there.
Yeah.
And yet they're fine prey and they're big predators. And so go figure how that.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
So do you feel that the emperor humans are thriving, or do you think their population is declining and like?
And if you could just repeat the question for the online people.
Yeah, what's happening to the emperor penguin population? And they recently, by one of the organizations, put out endangered species list, and which I did actually have with 18 species. I have some endangered species list. It's but the counts and how we estimate emperors is really trying because they're so spread out, and all these places are difficult to get to. And so we did a lot of counts at the colonies. That's one of the reasons we were going home. And we didn't get any idea of a trend. And so the answer you have to be accepting is we don't know. But there's certainly seeing what happened in 2023 with the ice. And I said that the molt is the most dangerous time for the adults. That's worse.
Are there other questions on the boat? That one slide oh, wait a minute, let me go and unmute here. I gotta get on the recording with you, historic. That one slide that you showed with Cape Washington to Franklin Island and the nice little diving, they go across, they have to cross a deeper water, but then you had, I think, when they're hitting the bottom at 500 meters, am I correct? They have to cross deep water.
Yeah,
But not like 500 meters isn't deep, but deeper than.
Yeah.
What?
2,000.
Okay.
It's the Drygalski Gulch.
Yeah, the gulch.
Yeah.
And then they're hitting 500, so they're eating off the bottom. So are they eating that silver shad that you showed earlier?
Yeah, I think that's it. There's been very little done about it. There's, Jim Berry was a friend and also a graduate from Scripps that looks at the Moss Landing area. He did a survey of Prairie Bank, and the most abundant fish there is Atlantic silverfish.
Oh, okay.
And it's by a long ways.
Cool. Anybody else? Leanne wants to know, behind me. Go ahead, Ann. I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
Based on the work, they have a feel for how much fidelity there is. They're going out there, they're going distances, they're multiple different space. Are they very faithful to the colony when they return to breed?
That's a good question, but it's important. It's one of those problems and how to solve. But I think one of the strengths of the emperor for survival is their capability to move. They're not at fixed locations like other penguins are. We have nests that they defend and all that. In fact, it's a lesson of sociology. Is the emperor penguins are the most cooperative. There's never a fight. You don't see fights in emperors.
And we got about 20 people online, but they're shy. So the chicks leaving with down. In your opinion, do you think, are they looking for warmer water? And that's a relative term in Antarctica and the south and the end of South America. So warm water is, but that's my joke. I mean, do you think they're looking for warm water?
I appreciate what is being asked there, because they go in the warm. It's still cold.
Yeah.
In our view, but it goes from -2 to up to about I want to say 7 or 8 degrees centigrade, and but I don't think that's the
Balmy.
issue.
Yeah, but-
It's pretty good. Their insulation and everything's pretty good. I think it's water temperature is driving this movement.
Okay, very good. Other questions on board? Yeah, go ahead, Jane.
You're saying you don't think it's the warmer water. You're thinking it's instinctive that they just go north? What do you think is driving them?
DNA.
Okay.
This is so widespread around the continent and the other colonies and all that they're driven to go north for some reason. They don't keep going. They eventually turn around and come by wintertime when the ice is forming. They're back in the ice, and so I think it's an inherited characteristic, and I've got a reason for that, but I'm not going to go into it here.
Okay, well, Jay, do you want to close it up here for us? You open, so maybe we can close it up. I think I got all the ones online.
Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate everyone online as well as here visiting us. For those that are here, I think, Jerry, you brought some books. I know I would like to purchase one. And we'll say goodnight. Hopefully we'll see you this Saturday at our fundraiser, Whale Watch, and if not then, on our program in September. Thank you very much. Good night.
And I will end this. so
Share
we
the
can-
off button on this.
Yeah.
What kind of whales do you expect to see?
Well, so they're seeing a few blues.
They're still blue.
Still a few blues, but lots of large groups of dolphin. So that's, and the few fins too, right?